You came to the wrong hood, or maybe the right one. Trying to make moves in the South Side? Gotta earn it, homie. Out here, you don't just survive. You hustle, you grind, you fight for every damn inch. Lowriders slide slow, eyes watching from every porch. And trust me, one wrong step, and you end up just another story on the block. But hey, you cool? Then take a seat, chill for a sec. We got tales to tell, real ones. Stories that'll take you deep into the streets, make you feel the heat, then rock you to sleep like a lullaby from the hood. So smash that like button, fool. Out here, even the hardest gotta rest sometime. The city never forgives. But tonight, you go and sleep like a king in the Grove. If the Grove's too wild for you, go chill in Vice or Liberty City. Ain't everyone built for the real hood. Go peep the channel and see for yourself. And don't get caught slipping.
The streets of Strawberry still smelled like burnt rubber and bad decisions when Dre and Drake Carter touched down, fresh out of a 6-year stretch in Bolingbroke, fitted in a thrift store hoodie and knockoff Jordans. He stepped off that Vinewood Metro bus like he owned the asphalt, Grove Street to the bone, chain swinging low, eyes scanning for changes, but ain't nothing really changed. Annie's apartment in Davis was still posted up behind that busted fence. Still got the same neighbors arguing over who took the last pack of cool filter kings. The purple murals down in Chamberlain Hills still scream Vago's beefin', and the 24/7s on Innocence Boulevard still got that same tweaker who swears he invented Face Browser. But Dre wasn't back for nostalgia. He was back cause word in the yard said the game had shifted. Val is faded, Vago's scattered, and a new plug named Mio Blanco had the east side on lock. Something about Russian ex-military hardware being moved through El Burro Heights, and Fib quietly turning a blind eye. Dre had a plan, something bold, something reckless, and it all started at midnight on a rooftop above the LTD gas station in Rancho, with a stolen burner phone, a duffel full of counterfeit Benjamins, and a whisper on the line saying, "If you want to eat again, meet me behind the Vanilla Unicorn, but come alone." Asterisk, the night air in Los Santos hung thick with exhaust and broken dreams as Dre and Drake Carter stepped off the metro at Carson Avenue. 6 years behind the green bars of Bolingbroke left a man hollow, but the block filled that hollowness like hot asphalt. His hoodie hung low, fresh kicks scuffed from the walk, and every step echoed like gunshots on Ganton's cracked sidewalks. Davis projects still smelled like Annie's Sunday gravy-simmered memories. That hit harder than any prison chow, but the chain-link fence out front had fresh paint chips, and the mural of CJ on the corner looked faded, like legends get when nobody tells the story no more. He cut across Chamberlain Hills, past the Vagos tag on the low-rise, past the conviction notice slapped on the old Jefferson Motel. 24/7 on Innocence Boulevard glowed neon through the smog. The same tweaker claimed to be the next Zuckerberg, pecking on an old ThinkPad. Dre shook his head, body humming with a jitter he hadn't felt since cell block count. In the rear view of every busted window, he saw what he used to be, a kid with dreams bigger than the Vinewood sign, hustling scrap off Del Perro Pier. Now he was something else and ex-con with a rep to rebuild and debts to collect from corners he'd never controlled. He slowed at the LTD gas station in Rancho, eyes flicking to the rooftop where a single burner phone lay taped under a vent. The message had been clear: midnight, come alone, Vanilla Unicorn, a club the old man jets used to laugh about, where heartbreak came cheap and every whiskey shot stung like betrayal. His pulse drummed like a chopper blade, cutting through the night silence. But he ripped that phone free, shoved it in his pocket, and kept moving in El Burro Heights. He could almost taste the Russian hardware rumored to be shipping through RPGs, military-grade optics, while the Fib looked the other way, like crooked referees in a streetball game. By the time he slid into Mirror Park's shadow-drenched graffiti maze, The city's spine was straightening, shaking off old rivalries. The ballads were ghosts. Grove Street still whispered his name, but a new kingpin Mio Blanco from East Vinewood held every dock and alley like a chessboard. Dre lit a blunt, flame sputtering against the smog. Thought of the night ahead, alliances. Born in backroom dives at the Rich Man Hotel, gun deals under the glow of Paleto Bay moon. Payback carved in hot lead down by the pier at Vespucci Beach. He exhaled slow, watched the smoke swirl into the neon. Los Santos had changed, but the grind never would. Midnight was calling, and Dre Carter intended to answer, ready to carve his name into the city's heart with every whisper in the ghetto wind. Asterisk the neon glow from the vanilla unicorn's back. Alley sign flickered as Dre edged past roped-off dumpsters and empty beer crates. Hood pulled tight over his head. The single street lamp overhead buzzed like a distant train horn, casting everything in jittery shadows. He checked the stolen burner phone. One unread message. Timestamped to minutes ago, no text, just a pinpoint on the map. He pocketed the device and stepped into the haze of stale smoke and cheap perfume leaking through the club's side door. Inside, the dancers moved under strobes that blinked between purple and green, bodies sweating on those sticky floors. Dre navigated through slurring drunks and bouncers with arms like tree trunks, ignoring the curious glances. Behind the bar, a faded mural of the Vinewood sign stared down like a ghost of better days. He slipped past the VIP rope manned by two, tats and teeth goons, dead-eyed and twitchy, until he reached the narrow hallway leading to the alley exit. There, leaning against the wall, was Tone T-Bone Jackson, his old blockmate from Ginn, now thicker, face laced with new scars, eyes burning with a story Dre hadn't heard yet. "Took you long enough, fam," T-Bone rasped, voice low. He pushed off the wall, lighting a smoke. "Mio's got you on the roster. He said you was back, then ghosted on the meet." Dre shook his head, sliding next to him. "Nah, man, I ain't fucking with Mio till I get the real play. You got something for me?" T-Bone flicked ash onto cracked concrete. "FIB's been tailing his arms shipment cell bro docks, checking every crate like they expect us to trip. But word is, Blanco's bringing in a crate of Russian long guns. Tonight at 2. You want in on that? I can set you up at the pier." Dre leaned closer, heartbeat thrumming in his ears. "What's the catch?" T-Bone exhaled smoke, eyes scanning down the alley. "You bring the heat, no bullshit. Pop off to Fib Satrads near El Burro Heights and keep the narcs busy for 5 minutes. I'll slip you the keys to their lockbox and the codes to Blanco's till truck. You grab that load. We split the take half in cash, half in hardware." You and Dre felt the old rush of adrenaline pinch his spine. He hadn't moved heavy weight since the yard they called it a straight-up suicide mission. But right now, Gibson Avenue felt like home, and opportunity was a loaded Glock. "I'm in," he said, voice steady as the phone's single bar of signal. T-Bone nodded, packing his roach. "Meet me at Slim's Diner, Davis, at 1:15. I'll have the Satrat Scrambler and the truck key. Dress like no hoodies. They'll snag you on thermal. Bring your peace and your appetite." Dre slipped the burner into his pocket, hefted, the phantom weight of the courier duffel in his mind, and stepped back inside the unicorn where the bass hit so hard you could feel your ribs tremble. Before the next song looped, he ghosted out through the front door and melted into the night traffic on Innocence Boulevard, each step echoing every rhyme he ever spat about claiming territory and taking names dot by the time he hit Davis Avenue. The streets were empty, just flickering street lamps and the distant wheel of a police cruiser. He paused at the corner, looked back toward Chamberlain Hills where the Vagos still roamed, then forward at the neon grin of Slim's Diner. Tomorrow, he'd be on El Bro docks chasing Russian steel. Tonight, he needed rest prison taught. Him early, that unchecked adrenaline was a fast lane to a cell. But as Dre crossed under the diner's buzzing sign, he knew one thing for sure. In Los Santos, You either make your move on your own terms or you get played, and he was about to run the table. The sun hadn't yet cracked the smog line, but Dre was already posted up in a Grove Street backlot, perched on a crate beside a stripped-down pale GDX. His phone buzzed once an encrypted ping from a burner he tossed into a bag of instant noodles back in Davis. The message was clean. Shipment moved early. East Vinewood cache compromised. Vago's active near the observatory. His jaw flexed. That wasn't supposed to happen. The guns they boosted from Blanco's shipment were set to move tonight quiet handoffs to Grove-affiliated sets operating deep in Mirror Park and the edges of Rich Man Glen. But now it was heat, blazing hot, and Vagos? They were playing a bold game, pushing past El Bro Heights and sliding toward Vinewood Hills like they owned it. T-Bone rolled up in an old Emperor, door hanging half off, sweat glistening under his snapback. They hit us hard, D, he said, tossing Dre a fresh Glock. Snatched the SUV while Frankie's crew was parked outside that off-brand taco spot in East Vinewood. Whole crate gone, masked, fast, and loud. Dre chambered around, nodding slowly. They trin a flex, make Grove look soft. Nah, T-Bone growled. They trin to erase us. Dre stood, hoodie rippling in the breeze. Behind him, the low hum of Grove street life kept rolling, kids playing on cracked sidewalks. Old heads posted on porches, music thumping from a third-floor window like a heartbeat. But tonight, all of that was threatened. Respect ain't static, it's earned daily, sometimes in blood. He climbed into the Emperor's passenger seat. Take us to the radio tower above Vinewood Bowl. We cut their signal, jam their comms, then we ride out. No talk, all action. The skyline tilted as the car crested the hill, Los Santos stretching wide and wild beneath them. Dre cracked the window and let the city smell pouring smoke, citrus trees, gun oil. Somewhere down there, masked Vago's operatives thought they were safe, thought they'd move silent. They were wrong. Tonight, Dre Carter was bringing Grove Street back into the headlines, spray-painted, spotlighted, and unforgettable. The ghetto never sleeps, and Dre, he was wide awake. Asterisk, the ride to Vinewood Bowl was quiet except for the occasional creak of the Emperor's suspension and the low hum of 90 Point to the low-down playing from cracked speakers. Dre sat low in the seat, one gloved hand steady on the grip of the Glock tucked under his hoodie. T-Bone kept his eyes on the road, weaving past parked cars and flickering street lamps like he'd memorized every shortcut since birth. The city rolled out before them, rich hills above, chaos brewing below. Vinewood had always been a playground for the privileged, but tonight, Grove was coming to collect. They pulled up behind the Vinewood Observatory's maintenance lot just before 3:15 a.m. The air was cool and sharp with pine and something acrid gun oil. Maybe. Dre stepped out, glancing at the red blinking relay on the communications tower. This was the relay Blanco and the Vagos were using to coordinate across East Vinewood and El Bro Heights. Knock it out, and the whole network would go dark for at least 20 minutes. Desio was already there, crouched behind a low wall, eyes on the tower's base, where the Vagos lookout smoked and laughed. He was slung low. He gave Dre the nod, then held up the fingers and pointed to the left flank. Dre dipped into the shadows. T-Bone crept around right, sliding a flashbang from his waistband. At their signal, he tossed it. The pop and shimmer of white noise split. The dark, before the guards could register sound again. Desio stepped out and dropped both with muffled shots. They collapsed into the grass. Dre ran up, planted the signal jammer with cold precision. Red went green, blinked once, and then the tower lights shorted. City comms stuttered. Police scanners glitched. Blanco's crew went mute. Time to move. The Cybertruck they'd stashed off Power Street waited with a full load of dummy crates. Beneath them, the real heat, a stash of recovered Rs Dre had quietly lifted during a Ballas Vago skirmish down. By Dutch London Street 6 months ago kept cold and quiet. waiting for the right moment. As they pulled back into East Vinewood, the streets glowed with the surreal hush that only shows up in the hours between deep sleep and first traffic. But the silence snapped quick when just burner buzzed. T-Man, Blanco spotted, Vinewood be LVD. In the white Kuruma, 2 cars deep. No clue what's coming, just grip tighten. He's with them, ridden casual, cocky, T-bone chuckle. That's good, gives us an audience. They rolled past the bowling alley just as Blanco's convoy crawled up toward the old Vinewood sign. Dre popped the Cybertruck into a side lot, yanked open the rear flap, and handed Desio one of the marked crates. Inside, the pristine rifles and a single note in black Sharpie, courtesy of Grove. Get your own. They parked the crate smack in the center of Vinewood Boulevard, propped it like an altar, then peeled back into the shadows just as Blanco's first vehicle slowed at the intersection. He stepped out, all designer sunglasses and fake bravado, catching the crate's message in the full wash of his high beams. For a long second, nobody moved. Then Blanco's driver swore. Blanco kicked the crate, and the entire block filled with Grove tags spray-painted overnight on street signs, sidewalk cracks, even the Vinewood star tiles. A message had been sent. Grove Street was not only back, it was above the law, ahead of the game, and 3 steps ahead of everyone watching as Dre, T-Bone, and Desio crossed over toward the lost compound to lay low. Dre lit a blunt and cracked the window. Below them, Vicewood shimmered, clueless. To the war breathing under its gold-plated nightlife, he smirked through the smoke. They thought we came to remember. Nah, we came to remind. And just like that, the city turned another page written in chrome, whispered in gunmetal, and signed in the silence that follows power. Los Santos was still alive. And tonight, it spelled Grove in all caps. The Grove Street safe house was dark, but not quiet. Inside, the old CRT hissed low on Channel X reruns while Dre sat at the kitchen table, cleaning the last AK pulled from the hijacked shipment. The tip of his black glove traced along the barrel, like a surgeon prepped for war. T-Bone paced in tight circles near the fridge, tension coiled in his shoulders. News of the Vinewood message had hit the streets like thunder. By sunrise, every gang between Merida Heights and La Mesa was buzzing. Vago's gonna clap back, T-Bone muttered, chewing on a toothpick like it owed him money. You humiliated Blanco in front of his own. Dre finished reassembling with a quiet click. That was the point. Los Santos forgot what Grove meant. We just reminded them. Down in Elborough, retaliation came fast. By noon, a drive-by lit up an auto shop tied to Grove's East Side set. No casualties, just a warning. Dre watched the dashcam footage on Miranda's cracked tablet. For masked Vagos, dark green Vincent GT, slow roll, auto fire. One shooter left behind a shell casing etched with a crown. They trying to make it personal. Desio said from the corner, loading rounds into a duffel. That's Blanco's mark. Dre stood, slung the AK over his shoulder, and slipped on his jacket. Then we make it biblical. By sundown, Grove crews split into 3 teams. Team 1 hit the scrapyard off Elysian Fields, where Vagos funneled stolen rides. Team 2 raided an East Vinewood stash house fronting as a smoothie bar. Dre led Team 3 up to Marlowe Drive, a Vagos stronghold in the hills. Quiet and fortified, overlooked for years, they crept in through the storm drains, scaling the back of a manicured mansion recently seized by a shell company. Dre popped the rear gate, and Desio disabled the cameras. They found Blanco's Lieutenant Beto El Rey, counting stacks in the sunroom lit by lead purple. Dre walked straight up, block raised, and spoke low. Tell Blanco Grove don't knock. We step in. A single shot popped. The money table overturned. Panic followed. Sirens didn't come fast enough. They left before the smoke cleared. By midnight, all of Los Santos was buzzing. The Vinewood sign had a new tag sprayed in massive green. Remember Grove? Murals rose in Strawberry overnight. Ballas went silent. Even a few Vagos dropped flags. Switching to private work.dr, he stood outside the LTD, sipping soda, watching the block return to form. Grove Street was more than legacy, now it was a living city pulse. A warning, a banner, a rhythm you couldn't mute. And Drake Carter. He lit the match, thrown the torch, and watched the empire ignite. There were no more rivals, just contenders, and Grove was back to stay. Asterisk by the time the sun dragged itself above the Los Santos skyline. Grove Street felt like it had breathed new life. Concrete walls wore fresh green tags, and the usual static over Grove's encrypted. Calm's line had gone quiet as if the city itself was holding its breath. Dre stood at the top of the cul-de-sac, hood up, block tucked in the waistline of his cargoes. He wasn't smiling, but his eyes carried the quiet weight of someone who knew he had the board in check. Inside Aunt Peach's old duplex, now the unofficial HQ, T-Bone, Miranda, and Desio circled a scratched-up coffee table littered with burner phones, half dismantled MAC-10s, and a box of chicken wings no one had touched in hours. Miranda had tied her curls up with a Gantt bandana, multitasking between tabs on her laptop and printouts of fib search logs. They're scrambling. She muttered. Bago's done filed an internal ticket to their own plugs. Look like Blanco's. Trying to clean his footprint before he gets ghosted by his Colombian supplier. Dre raised an eyebrow. You saying his own people about to cut him off. Looks that way. They think he's bleeding heat. That vine was stun. That wasn't just flash. You sent a message up the chain. Desio leaned back, legs kicked, onto the table. You got Blanco spooked, fam, but a scared man shoots before he speaks. He gonna make a mess. T-Bone swigged from his Sprite bottle. Face grim. Word is, he hired a cleaner. One of them boys from Blaine County ex-military. Goes by Ruck. Quiet dude. Pine-wrapped aches. Rides a Sanchez. Don't miss twice. Dre nodded slow. Then, we get to him before Ruck gets to us. The ambush came hours later. Midday. Under a choking sun in Little Seoul, where traffic jammed between tourist buses and taco trucks. Grove's East Side runner J-Mac got lit up by an invisible ghost. With a high-powered rifle. From a rooftop across from an HJ boutique, a single shot pierced the haze. J-Mac dropped on the sidewalk, bled out in front of a line of screaming kids. Headed for plastic surgery consults.dr, he got the call 15 minutes later. He didn't speak, just exhaled through his nose, handed Miranda the keys, and told T-Bone to get the team ready. Tonight, he said, we in Blanco, one way or another. Preparation moved fast. Miranda traced ballistic data to a single weapon family, sold through an Eastern European broker stationed out of La Puerta. That led them to a storage unit rented under an alias with a Tennessee address. Inside, broken parts, shell casings, and a contractant paid. Ruck had gone freelance. Blanco's last known ping came from the Galileo Observatory Classic High Ground. Paranoia. Sunset was in an hour. Blanco thinking cinematic, Dre muttered, wants a view before he bleeds. The crew split into 3 cars, a Sultan RS with blacked out windows, T-Bone's beater Primo with loose hubcaps, and Miranda's low-profile white fugitive with fake Uber decals. They approached from separate angles. Miranda coordinated via ear quiet, breaths, no nerves. Dre wore a TAC vest under a Taurus hoodie. When they parked below the observatory, the hill was near empty save for a few couples snapping selfies. Then, a shadow moved by the telescope dome to precise, to slow. Ruck, Miranda whispered. T-Bone drew his TEC-9, whispered, showtime. But Dre stepped out alone, arms visible, hood down, walked up the curved path like a man chasing the horizon. When Ruck stepped from the brushed camo shirt, rifle low, but ready Dre didn't flinch. You ain't gotta do this, Dre called. Whatever Blanco offered, we'll triple it. Or you take what you need and disappear. Ruck's head tilted slightly, his silhouette cast long in the dusk. Delayed, he said as shot cracked, but it wasn't his .dezzio from the ridge above. Had tagged Blanco himself lurking in the glass observation room, clutching the Glock, maybe the seconds from flanking Dre. The round punched through the reinforced panel and dropped Blanco like a folded card trick. Ruck looked up just long enough for Miranda to rush him, stun baton hissing against his ribs. He dropped. It didn't make the news, not officially, but the streets knew. Within a day, Vego's crews went radio silent. Cartel ties snapped like fishing lines. Grove reclaimed turf like vines eating pavement. Dre didn't gloat. He just kept showing up at barbershops, corner stores, the rec center on Carson Avenue, not with a gun, but with presence. That heavy, kind that says, I don't need to yell to own the room at dusk. He stood on the rooftop of the very observatory Blanco tried to claim. Below, Los Santos pulsed chaotic, fickle, beautiful. Miranda joined him, sipping a bottle of watered-down champagne they'd swiped from Vinewood Hills. Grove's back. She said DRE nodded, and this time, it ain't fading, because now it wasn't just about turf. It was legacy, carved in green, baptized in smoke, and whispered in every alleyway between Ganton and the top of the Vinewood sign. The Saga had been written in Drake Carter. He made sure nobody ever forgot the name. Again, back in the heart of Ganton, the streets were humming like engine blocks under pressure, vibrating with the kind of tension that only shows up when history has been written in gunpowder and tagged in fresh green. Dre sat on the porch of a boarded-up duplex near the old Johnson house, watching a group of local kids ride busted BMX down the cul-de-sac. The air smelled like barbecue, transmission fluid, and redemption. Word had spread. Grove had retaken its throne, and not by accident. Muralists were already painting over old ballot scrolls. The Jefferson Motel was under new management. Low-key Grove-friendly business people flipping rooms to returning Ganton families. Even the mega mall had a new barber shop. Caesar's Cuts, green banners hung proud, flanked by the pit bulls posted on either side like statues. But Dre wasn't feeling celebratory. Not yet, because victories in Los Santos had a half-life short as a dime backdrop near Mission Row. The city didn't just react, it plotted, and sure enough, during a late-night recon over Dutch London Street, T-Bone rolled up with some unsettling intel. Big Smoke's nephew, that fool Jav, has been rallying ex-ballas out in Merida Heights. He calling at the new Crown Syndicate, trying to start a hybrid turf balla's brains, Vego's muscle. Dre stared at the map sprawled across the hood of Miranda's tailgated Regina. He's smart, he muttered, starting out in industrial zones, not flashing, hoping we chill, thinking we won. Miranda nodded. He got suppliers from Blaine County too. Word is, meth and artillery, not just pistols, we talking drone-grade launchers. Dre cracked his knuckles. Then we make the first move. That weekend, Dre orchestrated a streetwide summit disguised as a block party DJ posted near the Dippin' Deli. Grilled links on every corner. Speakers bumping old-school Mad Dog like it was 1997 again. But scattered among the crowd were operatives from 6 different sets: Saddlewood, East Los, Strawberry, Vespucci, not suits. Soldiers. DRE stepped to the mic after sunset, green lights casting his figure like a silhouette from a war film. We took Grove back with discipline and blood, he told them, but we ain't gonna keep it alone. Javis wanna spark something new. Cool. Let's make sure it burns out before it breathes. That night, multiple raids dropped across Merida Heights. Grove crews hit stash houses, seized gear, knocked over a truck headed up Senora Freeway full of unregistered weapons. They didn't claim it. They didn't boast. They let the silence speak. 2 days later, Javis dropped a video, masked, hood up, flanked by Tagoons. He promised retaliation, but you could hear the crack in his voice and certainty. Maybe even feared Dottie or he watched the footage from his spot near Grove Gas, leaned back in a lowrider, arms folded. "Keep bluffing," T-Bone said, trying to hold on to dust. Dre exhaled slow. A king don't respond to threats. He just tightens the crown. Los Santos had turned the page again, and the next chapter was already being penned in green ink, asphalt blood, and block-born justice. Grove wasn't just back dot, it was untouchable. Asterisk Dre sat on the back bumper of a dusty Primo, hoodie soaked in sweat, Glock resting idle against his thigh, his gaze locked on the skyline where the city blinked like it was holding secrets behind every window. Los Santos felt different, not just reclaimed but rewired. Every street corner, every narrow alleyway, every liquor store that used to look through him now tilted its head and noticed. Grove wasn't just back, it was embedded in the grid, feeding off the city's current like some ancestral memory that had finally awakened. But peace in LS was a myth with an expiration date. For every silence Drake created, some fool out there was loading a clip, thinking this was still a game. Case in point, the new Crown Syndicate. Javis had gone quiet after Grove's midnight raids, but quiet didn't mean dead. Word on the scanner said he was holed up near the old textile mills down in Rancho, using a makeshift bunker beneath a shell company called Eastbourne Supplies. Cameras in the street lamps, drones running circles over Jamestown. The fool was prepping like it was Baghdad. And Dre, he wasn't gonna wait for another kid to get zipped in a bag because some wannabe OG got ideas. Inside the duplex, Miranda huddled over a 3-screen rig, feeds flickering from rooftops across South LS. On one, a shaky drone cam showed Javis pacing like a lion in a cage-white tank top, gold chain, a micro SMG bouncing on his side. He looked tense, desperate, dangerous. T-Bone entered the room, wiping grease off his hands from tuning up a pair of reinforced Buffalo STX downstairs. "You want to take him out clean or make a mural out of it?" Dre didn't blink. Both. The plan was surgical. Dre was done with messy, too many bodies and the feds come sniffing. But precision, that was Grove's new signature. They'd use the South L as utility tunnels, those old Procopio power grid tunnels the city forgot about back in '98. Miranda hacked the maintenance schedules between the 15 and the 45 a.m. No patrols, no motion sensors, no sewer sweeps. A 20-minute window through the underbelly of the city, silent, invisible. Desio led a 4-man crew through the tunnels carrying suppressed weapons and thermal scanners. Above ground, Dre, Miranda, and T-Bone moved him through an abandoned scrapyard. They worked in sync radio silent, breathing only through signals and years of understanding each other without words. Inside Eastbourne Supplies, Javis had a crew, sure, but most were punks recruited online cloud junkies, not gangsters. Grove's entry was ghost-like. By the time the first lookout noticed Desio, the barrel had already touched his temple. Dre moved through the back hallway, footfalls quiet on stained concrete, until he reached the bunker door, locked, reinforced. But Dre had a solution, a breaching charge tucked in a steel lunchbox. When the wall cracked open and the smoke cleared, Javis stood, coughing, aiming low dot to slow. Dre didn't fire. He lowered his weapon and stared the kid down. "You ain't Ballas. You ain't Vagos. You just scared, and desperate makes people messy. So I'll ask once. You walk out, or we don't leave nothing behind for the coroner to guess at." Javis hesitated, trembling. Then he dropped the piece. No bullet was fired that night, not from Dre. They walked Javis out under cover of smoke. Cameras looped, streets empty. By sunrise, Grove crews rolled down Forum Drive in a Unity Cruise green flags. Waving from windows, music blaring old school West Coast anthems. Kids lined the sidewalks, tossing up signs, chanting rhymes they heard from their big cousins. Even the old heads nodded. Miranda passed Dre a wrapped breakfast burrito and an old t-shirt that said, "We've been here, Dre smiled, tired, eyes heavy, but soul calm. Grove Street wasn't just surviving dot, it was thriving. And in a city built on cycles of power, Dre Carter had cracked the code: build smarter, strike harder, and never let the streets forget where it all started. Right there, under that green sign. Right there, where the whole world learned to say, Grove Street, always. By mid-morning, Grove Street was everywhere. Even the city hall pigeons carried green feathers in their wings, circling low over the courtyard where Dre Carter lounged against the steps, shades on, hoodie unzipped just enough to show the holster at his hip. Behind him, Miranda was cheek-deep in a stack of dossiers, parking tickets, open warrants. Off the books leans building a web that would strangle any local official who dared cross him. T-Bone leaned on the marble railing, scuffing his Nikes against the stone, and Desio paced like a caged dog, itching to move on the next front. Dre flicked open his burner, a text from an unknown number. Palmetto Bay Meth Labs bleeding product, South County Line Boys tipping fib that Grove's behind it. His jaw tightened. He passed the phone to Miranda. You see this? She asked, eyebrows raised. He nodded. We set the market on fire, so hard, even our own streets feel it. Now they're pointing fingers at us. T-Bone spat out a laugh. They think we manufacturing? Bruh, they picking a fight with the wrong hood. Desio swung around. Then let's show them how wrong we are. Less than 2 hours later, Dre and his crew rolled out again in a black Lurcher Enterprise van plate swapped for burner. Tags, windows tinted dark. They barreled north on Route 68, dessert heat banging off the metal, jukebox bass rattling from the back. Dre stared at the horizon where the skyline of Palmetto Bay hovered. Grocery cranes, a shattered pier, the forested, hills beyond. This wasn't Grove's turf, but tonight, Grove would carve its name into every meth-cooked vein in that county dot by 4 p.m. They were parked near Palmetto Forest Road, a gravel lot choked with abandoned campers and rusted trailers. Miranda tapped, directions into her phone. The main lab's down a hollow to Clicks West. Security's light to guard dogs. One camera. She unrolled a map. 3 link bunkers surrounded by chain link fences. Each held half a metric ton of pink meth crystals, worth more than Grove's entire annual take. Dre twisted a lighter. In his fingers, we hit the mother lode first, then clean up the stragglers on the way out. T-Bone strapped on a chest rig. I'll drop the dogs, he said, voice low. 1 bite to the neck. They won't know what bit him. Desio cracked his knuckles. I'll cover the rear. Don't want no unseen complications. They moved. Out in a triangle Dre taking point. Miranda operating comms from the van. T-Bone and Desio flanking. When they breached the first fence, the dogs barked twice before T-Bone bolted the rail and silenced them with a single, precise shot. Dre slipped past a broken lock into the lab's open bay. Stainless steel vats, a jumble of pipes, plastic, tubs filled with crystals as vivid as spilled crayons. He drew a duffel from his pack and started filling it dot behind him. Desio secured the rear perimeter while T-Bone stuffed crates of product, every pallet nearly doubling Grove Street. Supply. Minutes later, Dre whistled. Let's ghost. Miranda's voice crackled in his ear. FIB scanners heading this way courtesy of a tipsy deputy. Who thinks he got Grove blood on his hands? Dre didn't hesitate. He exit Plan B tunnel. 2. He pointed to the map scrawled scribble, an old mine shaft they prepped as a fallback. In the pale light of dusk, they spilled out of the lab just as a black Fib SUV came roaring down the road. They melted into the trees, leapt into the shaft mouth, and disappeared into the mountain's belly. Back in Los Santos by dawn, the Grove, van rolled up to a neon-faded chop shop in Davis. T-Bone and Desio lugged to duffels, each thumping with crystal shards. Dre stepped out, the first light outlining his silhouette against mural-painted walls. He looked at Miranda face pale, but eyes bright and nodded dot inside. They poured the product into vacuum-sealed packets, slapped Grove logos on everyone, and loaded them onto push carts bound for the South LS markets. By midday, every corner served pink lines cut with Grove's tag. No one could touch that supply, while rival crews scrambled to find their own product. Just phone buzzed again. County clean, no trace. Fib disbands local task force. He let out a slow breath, but the high was short-lived. 2 days later, their secure line lit up with panic from Desio. Safe house compromised. SWAT on the block. We got 20 minutes. They regrouped under the Ganton freeway over past neon green beams. Slicing through the concrete darkness, Dre slammed a fist into his palm. Who did this? Miranda tapped at her laptop. Internal leak. One of our corner boys flip caught. With a kilo and snitch Grove for immunity, T-Bone spat. They ratting on us like Vagos turned saints. Dre cut him off. No emotion. Fix it. He turned back to Miranda. I want his name. Allie. Phone records every contact he's made in the last 30 days. And pulled the trigger on Operation Blackout. Her eyes flicked. That's extreme. He stared her down. Necessary. That night, every FIB comm network and LAPD radio in South LS went dark for 15 minutes. Operation Blackout was a block wide EMP loop they tested on scrap electronics months ago. Key cell towers, police repeaters, even Grove's own fallback circuits. The city's grid hiccup traffic lights swerved. Sirens sputtered silence. And every surveillance camera looped a 10-second all-clear clip they preloaded weeks prior. In that blackout, Dre moved like a ghost. He and T-Bone hit the corner where the snitch stayed, a rundown duplex on Quincy Street. Lights on the fritz. No guard dogs this time. They crept up the stairs, radio silent, Dre knocking once, then kicking the door in. Inside, the kid sat on a couch, eyes wide. As the panel collapsed behind Dre's foot, the kid whined for mercy, but his voice died when Desio pressed the Glock to his temple. Dre spoke like a sermon. Grove ain't no playground. You snitch on your own. You get played. Now you're in arrears. He hauled the kid outside into the wet night, left him zip-tied to a signpost under the flicker of a busted street lamp. T-Bone slapped a fresh tag on his forehead. Snitch. Then they vanished back into the black. Less than 10 minutes later, the grid returned. Lights flicked on. Sirens screamed back to life, and Fib was chasing shadows completely blind. That kid, he spent 48 hours on the signpost before word came down. He'd been unlawfully arrested. A release, never pressed charges, never saw a lawyer. Whispered rumor was he walked off into the night. With permanent work in Blaine County's Forest Patrol, by sunrise, Dre was back at Aunt Peach's HQ, coffee in hand, the crew nursing bruises and smiles. He didn't celebrate. He tallied the wins and the losses on a whiteboard, market secured, intel leak purged, snitch neutralized. Then he added a new line. Next move, expansion east of La Puerta, water rights for Grove Run car washes. Miranda looked at him. You ever sleep? He shrugged, letting the morning light catch the steel on his Glock. Only when the city does. T-Bone cracked his neck. Let's roll. We got ships to unload and politicians to frame. As they piled into the van, Dre took one last look at Ganton's skyline bleeding into sunrise. Every street they reclaimed, every corner they owned, was another brick in Grove's reborn empire. And though the nights were long, the stakes higher than ever, Dre knew one thing for sure. Los Santos belonged to Grove, and he'd make sure nobody failed, Vagos or Colombian cartels ever forgot it. By dusk the following week, Grove's green had bled into every corner of Los Santos. Not just the paint on walls or the flags from lowriders, but the very hum of commerce, politics, and power. Dre sat behind the wheel of a black stretch limo plated in burner tags, but driven by one of his own rolling down Palomino Avenue toward City Hall. At his side, Miranda tapped away on a tablet streaming live feeds of every council member's phone calls. T-Bone and Desio lounged in the back seat, rifles stashed under blankets. Eyes sharp through tinted windows dot inside City Hall's grand atrium. The marble echoed with suits and lobbyists pressing clipboards. Tonight, Dre wasn't here for handshakes. He was here to rewrite ordinances. He stepped off the limo, hood down, blazer open to reveal the Grove-branded bulletproof vest underneath, and walked straight up to Councilwoman Ferris. She was packing up her files, face pale. "Councilwoman," Dre said, voice smooth as Chardonnay, "I've got an amendment to discuss solar water rebates for small business car washes. It's a public service." Ferris glanced around. "You're early. Ordinance 47 to 8 never even hit committee." He smiled, tapping his phone. "It did when I forwarded it to every legal aid for hours ago." "Look," he said, sliding a PDF across her desk. "Voter support is already at 63%. This passes tomorrow, or you're on record fighting green energy for the private sector." She swallowed. "I need to confer. You'll find it in your inbox," Dre replied. Copies went to the press too, within 24 hours. Local news ran clips of Ferris praising public-private partnerships with Grove Street. Entrepreneurs, car wash owners applied for rebates that funneled city funds into shell corporates owned by Dre. Himself and T-Bone's crew quietly collected the kickbacks. Grove's coffers swelled twice over, and any opposition in City Hall found their emails ghosted or publicized back again. Business never slowed. Dre walked into Aunt Peach's when the sun was still high, greeted by the scent of simmering greens and the chatter of kids earning pocket money. At a Grove-run community center, he paused at the bulletin board where flyers for after-school programs now sat beside discrete job postings for Grove Street logistics. Underneath, a new marker read, "Water rights secured for 60 industrial zones. Expansion eastward approved." Miranda waved, eyes bright. "We got final sign-off from LA County on those rights. Next step, industrial fleet fueling stations in Harmony." Desio leaned on a table, loading magazines. "We also got intel. Fib Task Force planning to sweep through Vinewood, targeting our shipping corridors." Dre narrowed his gaze. "Then, we give them a show." He rubbed his thumb over the Grove emblem on his vest. Operation Greenwave. That night, the docks at Elysian Island throbbed with movement. Under cover of darkness, T-Bone's divers planted magnetic scramblers on every fit patrol craft so their navigation systems would flicker. Frankie and a dozen Grove engineers set up for G hotspots around Harvest Boulevard to loop police. Dash cams. Miranda manned the command van, routing every law enforcement frequency into a feedback echo that would last exactly 12 minutes. At midnight, Dre himself oversaw the decoy shipment. Empty containers stamped refrigerated produce, rolling onto the freighter mission bay. Meanwhile, the real cargo over 100 industrial pumps, a mobile desalination rig, and a fleet of towing trucks slid into 6 waiting Grove trailers hidden under tarps, swept past the terminal. Gates by diversions at both entrances, they converged on Harmony's old waterworks. Now under Grove control dot by 12:07 a.m. Radios erupted in confusion. Patrol boats stalled offshore. Helicopters circled blind. Dash cams replayed looping footage of empty docks, and Grove's fleet rolled out unimpeded, headlights tracing a path down Del Perro Boulevard toward the inland corridors dotted dawn. The Los Santos Times ran a splash page. "FIB denied. Grove shift completes largest civic public works takeover in city history." Commenters hailed Grove Street as the unofficial triage unit for Los Santos infrastructure. City TV ran footage of Dre in a hard hat, clipboard in hand, inspecting pumps the very same rigs he diverted from federal seizure. 2 nights later, Dre stood atop the Harmony pumping station, looking out across pipelines snaking through, scrubbing toward Vinewood and Chamberlain Hills. Below, Mechanics in Grove Green coveralls adjusted valves, charged generators, and tested the water flow. In his ear, Miranda reported live metrics, volume, pressure, projected municipal savings every data point feeding into Dre's master plan. T-Bone lit a cigar beside him, exhaling smoke that curled into the starlit sky. They gonna rewrite the textbooks on how to run a city. He said .DRE cracked a rare grin. They'll study Grove for generations. As dawn spilled gold over the pumping station, Dre dialed a secure line. Set up the board meeting. I want every port director and every county supervisor in one room next week. It's time to talk bigger partnerships, rail expansion, telecom infrastructure, maybe even the new hospital in Davis. And I want our price. He hung up, eyes scanning the horizon of Los Santos, a city stitched together by highways and alleys. Gangway and Grand Avenue, every inch now crossing through Grove's veins. The power brokers would bow, the fib would adapt, and the neighborhoods would hum in green for decades to come. Because Dre Carter had done more than reclaim turf. He'd built a parallel state apparatus governing, policing, investing a civic empire that no ordinance or SWAT raid could dismantle overnight. And as he turned back toward the busy lights of his new dominion, he whispered almost to himself, Los Santos is Grove Street now. And under that promise, the city bent and stayed for good. Asterisk, the sun dipped below the skyscrapers as Drake Carter stood on the balcony of his Grove Street penthouse, lights of Los Santos flickering like constellations in the urban galaxy. Below him, the city pulsed on Grove's new infrastructure, water flowing where drought once reigned. Neighborhoods rewired with Grove-backed sanitation, and every district touched by the Greenwood brand. Grove Works Incorporated, Miranda, and T-Bone joined him, silent as gravity. A soft chime signaled your secure tablet lighting up with a briefing. Rail permit approved. Telecom franchise greenlit. Hospital board seats secured. Dre let the news settle like a benediction. His phone buzzed again, another note. New target. San Andreas Highway Extension. A grin curved his lips. He raised his glass of single malt. To Grove Street, from ghetto to government. They clinked in quiet victory as the city exhaled around them. Los Santos was theirs, and this time, forever. By the time Drake Carter poured the last drop of single malt into his glass, the Grove Street penthouse overlooking Unity Station was humming with midnight light. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, cranes dangled cables above the future San Andreas. Highway extension just next masterwork to tie Los Santos from the urban core, all the way up through Blaine County. This wasn't just a road, it was the lifeline he controlled, the artery through which Grove's commerce, muscle, and influence would pour unchallenged. Miranda Ferraro tapped at her tablet, triggering the holomap that shimmered over the cocktail table. Permits finalized for the Mulholland interchange. She said, county supervisors sign off on the environmental waivers. Under those private sector efficiency clauses, we start tunneling through the Chumash Ridge next week. T-Bone Ramirez cracked his knuckles. Contractors from El Burro Heights, they're primed. They think they're building an honest job. I lined up the crews with payoffs and non-disclosure clauses that'll never know what dirty work. We slip in under the concrete. Desio whistled low. FIB's been sniffing around the DeSoto oil fields. They ran background checks on our shell companies. They're close, man. Dre raised his glass. Let them come. Our back-channel bribes have every agent on payroll. Even if they launch a grand jury tomorrow, we bury them in paperwork and ghost assets. Tonight, we celebrate the plan. 2 nights later, the Grove Command Center was a hive of screens and schematics. Under fluorescent glare, crews in reflective vests pored over blueprints of the Mulholland overlooked tunnel. 1.2 miles of bore drilled straight through the mountainside, linking Vinewood Crest to Grapeseed. Dre moved between stations, nodding at satellite scans, reviewing sinkhole simulations, and examining the placement of Grove-installed emergency supports. That were really steel-reinforced compartments for smuggling arms or rerouting cash, Miranda's voice over the comms was calm but urgent. T-Bone, the North Portal's guard rotation changed. They doubled the night shift after those mysterious sinkholes last month. T-Bone grinned. Perfect cover. I'll stage a hydraulic leak flood the portal access. They'll evacuate the site for hours. Dezio tapped out the sequence. When the leak alarm sounds, we deploy the Nitro TX charge's silent demolition. We reroute the bore machines to carve a backdoor entrance into the spoil yard. From there, we'll plant the real cable conduits and haul in the rigs under the guise of emergency repairs. Dre leaned in, breath warm on the glossy map. And once the main tunnel goes dark, 5 minutes of grid blackout courtesy of Miranda's EMP loop. We switch the manifests. The FIB inspected freight cars become Grove's covert arms shipments bound for Sandy's shores. You've got one shot. No margin for error. After 13 a.m., under a moonless sky, Grove's repair team arrived at the North Portal. T-Bone staged leak-sent water gushing across the approach ramp, sending the real construction crews scurrying to safety as floodlights snapped. On, Dezio and the operatives slipped through the ruined barriers, planting Nitro TX charges at strategic support columns. Across town, Miranda initiated the EMP loop. Traffic lights blinked out. Police radios warbled into static, and every camera inside the portal control van replayed a 10-second all-clear loop. In that silent window, the charges detonated. With muted precision, a section of the tunnel wall folded inward like a book, revealing the hidden service corridor Dre had built months earlier, steel-toed and gloved. The team linked pre-cut hydraulic beams into the northern seal, pried it open, and rolled in track carriers loaded with Grove's real cargo, crates of high-end communications, gear, thermal optics, and discreet packages of $5 seed capital for future shell ventures. They sealed the blast wall behind them, hid the evidence of break-in under rubble, and vanished into the night. By the 47 a.m., the real equipment was secure in the southern spoil yard, ready to roll on flatbed trailers under cover of pre-dawn fog. The FIB patrol then arrived moments later to find only a malfunctioning pump and a handful of frantic contractors with no idea what had just slipped through their fingers. Dawn broke over Los Santos like a whisper of victory. The morning papers carried headlines for the new highway installation. San Andreas extension breakthrough, tunneling ahead of schedule, complete with photos of county supervisors in hard hats, beaming next to Grove-coded workers. The LSPD tweeted real-time updates on traffic detours, praising the seamless cooperation between city, county, and Grove Street enterprises. Inside City Hall, Dre smiled as Councilman Ortiz fumbled his speech. This is a model public-private partnership, Ortiz said. Our thanks to Grove Street, proving once again that efficiency and progress thrive under visionary leadership. By midweek, the flatbeds loaded with Grove's covert gear rolled past the Vespucci Pier, steamed into the Pacific under falsified manifests, and landed 3 days later in hostile territory overseas. Another node in Drew's expanding global network. Back home, the Mulholland Tunnel's first boring head sliced through bedrock, greeted by a ribbon cutting at the Overlook with local press and binocular-toting tourists. They saw only the gleaming machine and the smiling Grove logo, but among the Grove elite Dre, Miranda, T-Bone, Dezio, the real celebration came in a hidden chalet on the outskirts of Grapeseed. Over smoky cigars and aged bourbon, they toasted to the silent coup, controlled infrastructure, weaponized logistics, and a political fortress that no judge or law enforcement agency could breach. Dre raised his glass again. From Ganton to the hills, from the docks to San Andreas, Grove Street is the city's backbone. We built the roads, we paved the politics, and we own every mile in between. Miranda clicked her tablet, displaying real-time traffic flow maps and encrypted shipping routes. Next, Rosewood and Flint County broadband. Then maybe we look at that high-speed rail they've been talking about. T-Bone laughed. embers drifting upward. Bound to be a hell of a party where we control the trains too. Just gaze drifted to the mural of CJ still hovering on the Vinewood hillside. A reminder of how far they'd come. The great ocean. Highway now bore Grove's signature as surely as that skyline did, under his hand. Los Santos and beyond pulse with new veins of commerce and power. And though the nights ahead would bring new challenges, jealous rivals, probing investigators, whispers of betrayal, Gray knew the city was already gripped by Grove's final design. The San Andres extension wasn't just asphalt and concrete. It was a monument to the true architects of Los Santos, carving their names into every mile, every tunnel, and every contract dot as he exhaled a plume of bourbon-tinged smoke into the contemplative silence. Drake Carter felt one certainty. The empire would keep growing, mile after mile, through ghetto grid and government halls alike, and no force on earth would ever stop it. By the time the high-speed rail proposal hit the front pages, complete with CGI fly-throughs of gleaming carriages slicing through the Vinewood hills, the Griffith Observatory had become Drake Carter's personal war room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked not just the sprawl of Los Santos, but the first test shafts of the Mulholland Tunnel, glinting half buried in moonlight. On a long table lay 3 framed blueprints, the rail's route map, a timetable of projected ridership, and a list of key stakeholders stamped with Grove Street seal. Miranda paced beside a bank of monitors. Union votes swing next Tuesday, she said, tapping the tablet. We've got 78% of Metrotech workers on board, but the Transit Authority's board is split 5-5. Mayor Richards is wavering. Federal funds hinge on environmental review. Just Gaze didn't move from the rail map. Then we give him a reason to sign. I want the Carousel Mall complex redesigned, buried in that review. New parking structure, green roof, $120 million in concessions. Make it impossible to vote no. T-Bone cracked his knuckles. I'll handle the council members who need persuasion. Nothing dirty, just a quiet dinner and a won't miss this deal pitch. Desio hovered by the window, pistol grip flashlight in hand from last night's perimeter sweep. FIB's task force just got a fresh mandate to look into Grove Street. Enterprise's shady shell transfers. They're sniffing around bank execs in Pillbox Hill. Dre finally turned, cold and measured. Then we give them something bigger to chase. He tapped the logo as remote. On the screens, Gridcom, Networks Grove's latest acquisition, lit up. We blow up their pipeline into the public sphere. Tomorrow at dawn, Gridcom goes live. Free broadband at every block, zero buffering. They can't investigate a Goodwill program. After AM, the first tower blinked online at Vespucci Beach, a free Wi-Fi hotspot broadcasting GrovNet. In welcome screens, surf speeds doubled citywide. News vans rolled up to photograph children fast-timing homework help in public parks. By mid-morning, bloggers were trending #Grove for good. City Hall couldn't spin that away. Even FIB Director Nadia Fox had to admit in a closed-door meeting their traffic data is legitimate. We can't claim it's a cover for money laundering. Meanwhile, Dre and Miranda slipped into the council chambers disguised as lobbyists for Los Santos Future Coalition. They filed a last-minute addendum to the Rail Ordinance public-private collaboration on grade, separations, a new station at La Puerta Harbor, and Grove-funded heritage plaques at every stop celebrating the city's cultural legacy. The vote went through 9-1. Councilman Rodriguez peeled off just to look independent out by sunset. Shovels turned earth at the Vinewood Hills worksite. A banner overhead proclaimed, Grove high-speed rail connecting communities. Dre stood at the podium, hard hat low, fist raised. Cameras flashed as he promised economic revitalization for every borough. Beneath him, crews from Elborough Heights to Grapeseed cheered that night. The 5th Task Force erupted in frustration. Every subpoena for Grove financials hit dead ends accounts cleaned. Transfers laundered through Gridcom vendor payments. Agent Trent Pulaski, the task force's lead, found his desk cleared of evidence and his name leaked to tabloids as a rogue investigator. A whistleblower email, forged with Garden District IPs, accused him of bribery. Within hours, Pulaski was under internal review. His team was disbanded. Dre watched the spectacle from his helipad atop the completed Greenson Tower, a landmark he'd bought and retrofitted with solar panels. He swirled bourbon in a crystal glass, listening to the roar of turbines below. T-Bone joined him, eyes bright. They're so busy tearing themselves apart, they don't even see you pull ahead. Dre smiled. Speak for yourself. We're not done. He tapped a button. Below, the tower's lead mesh shifted from corporate blue to soft green, subtle signal to every Grove cell that the next phase had begun. Phase 4, the media. Dre assembled a summit of local influencers, YouTubers, podcasters, citizens, journalists at the new Grove Cave downtown. Free coffee, free Wi-Fi, free seats at a Grove-sponsored panel on grassroots leadership. Every attendee live-streamed interviews praising Dre's vision. Clips flooded social media. Meet the ex-con who built the city. How Grove Street saved LA water. Broadband versus AT&T, the David and Goliath tale. Across the bay, their team quietly acquired majority stakes into minor TV stations channel 9 News and LA Business Network, then flipped them overnight with stunning newsroom changes. New Garden District mascots, new Grove Street branding, new segments highlighting city heroes who just happen to be Grove executives or newly minted car wash owners. By dawn, the city's neutral channels preached the Grove gospel without a hint of irony. Yet every empire faces a test. In the weeks that followed, a coalition of small-town mayors threatened to file a multi-state injunction against the rail extension, citing environmental mistreatment of Chumash Ridge. FIB tried relaunching Pulaski's task force under a new director and other outsider, and whispers circulated that national media were sniffing around Gridcom's offshore contracts. Dre convened the inner circle in his subterranean war room, a retrofitted wine cellar. In the Greenson penthouse, bottles lined the walls, each labeled with a milestone: Mulholland Tunnel inauguration, Gridcom launch, Harmony Pump Station opening. He poured 3 glasses. They want a war. Fine. We give them a media war, a legal war, and an economic war. But don't worry, we've got the advantage on every front. Miranda slid a file across the table, evidence of environmental violations by the very coalition mayors threatening the injunction, timber clear cutting, illegal water draw from local aquifers. We feed this to the Times and the drought task force, she said. They'll call off their suit. T-Bone grinned. And if they don't, we just build a bypass. The rails don't need approval from those cowboys. Desio clicked his flashlight on. FIB's new director is old school. He's digging into Gridcom's backers. We'll need a scapegoat. Dre raised his glass. Then we give him one. I've already prepped the narrative. A disgruntled former partner. Embezzlement. Hiding funds in a Cayman front. By next week, half the FBI email list will be chasing that ghost while we keep laying track. In the weeks that followed, the small town injunction evaporated under the weight of exposes on local environmental crimes. The FIB's new task force was mired in scandal after the planted defamation scheme against the scapegoat played out on national networks, complete with leaked bank statements and paparazzi photos of the ex-partner's lavish lifestyle. Meanwhile, the rail advanced through Chumash Ridge on schedule, and Gridcom signed its first municipal franchise in neighboring Ventura County. On the morning of the rail's topping out ceremony, when the final girder would be installed, Dre Carter once again took the podium under the banner Grove Street, building tomorrow today. He acknowledged the challenges, the critics, and the naysayers, then held aloft the last piece of rail. With a single swing of his golden sledgehammer, it locked into place. The crowd erupted. Drones overhead recorded every angle for propaganda loops and newsreel segments. As fireworks showered the mountainside in emerald sparks, Dre looked over the gathered city and felt the calm certainty of a man who had reshaped an entire world. Next on the agenda, the high-speed corridor to Blaine, the state legislature run for a permanent seat, and exploring port investments up in San Fierro. He turned to Miranda, T-Bone, and Desio. We've proven we can build roads, waterworks, power grids, and broadband. Now it's time to build our own governance courts, media oversight, even education. Grove Street isn't just a street anymore. It's a blueprint for a new state. They toasted under fading green fireworks, the rails still vibrating beneath their feet, and as Los Santos buzzed with dawnbreak silence, Dre knew the real conquest was only beginning. Empire wasn't just taken or given, it was constructed piece by piece, with steel, code, influence, and the indomitable will of those who dared to dream bigger than any city had ever seen. Dre Carter's office atop Greenson Tower had transformed into something far beyond a war room. It was the nerve center of a rising microstate. Floor-to-ceiling screens now displayed voter registration tallies, precinct maps shaded in Grove, green, and live sentiment analysis from social feeds. At a polished mahogany table sat Miranda Ferrar poring over focus group transcripts. Steve Bone, Ramirez laying out security detail plans, and Desio coordinating logistics for campaign, rallies, and clandestine community projects alike. It's official, Dre said, voice low but charged. We file tomorrow. Dre Carter for mayor of Los Santos. He tapped the stylus on the interactive map, zooming in on traditionally hostile districts Vespucci Beach, Strawberry, and La Puerta. We win those, we win the city. Miranda nodded, fingers dancing over data, education reforms, microloans for corner stores, expanded Grovnet hotspots in underserved zones. Our polling shows those issues beat crime reduction talk by a 30-point margin. We framed Grove not as a gang, but as a civic coalition. T-Bone cracked a grin. And we've got the muscle to keep the streets calm on election day. Paid volunteers in green hats, rapid response teams for any troublemakers. Desio leaned forward. I've arranged private security for every polling site. Teams embedded as election monitors, armed but discreet. Nobody's snatching ballots on our watch. Dre stood and swept his gaze across the room. Good, but we need a keynote moment, something big. He paused. Tomorrow morning, we'll host a press conference at Harmony Pump Station. We'll unveil Grove's Community Resilience Act, a proposal to allocate city funds directly to neighborhood-run health clinics, with Grove Street Enterprises underwriting the first 2 years. No middlemen, no bureaucrats. Next morning, the pump station's floodlights glowed even before sunrise. Reporters clustered around the podium, cameras rolling as Dre strode into View Blazer unbuttoned, tie loose, hands gripping the mixed stand. Behind him, a crowd of community leaders and everyday citizens held placards reading Resilience Now, and Dre delivers. Good morning, Los Santos. He began, voice warm but unwavering. For too long, our communities have been promised change only to see dollars disappear into City Hall's black hole. Today, Grove Street isn't delivering slogans, we're delivering healthcare. Walk-in clinics run by locals, staffed by volunteers and paid practitioners, with supplies and funding guaranteed by Grove Street Enterprises. This is not charity. It's an investment in you because you built this city. The cameras panned over the crowd, faces hopeful, nodding in unison. Later, sound bites went viral. This clinic plan is real action. We need more Carter and less politics as usual. Grove Street is finally showing us trust. Social media lit up with hashtag Resilience Act as the news cycle pivoted, forcing every pundit to dissect this proposal rather than the usual crime stats. By midday, just campaign team activated Operation Courthouse. Miranda leaked a trove. of FIB documents to local attorneys showing how conventional contractors hired by the city had padded costs by 20%. The story broke as City Hall's crony contracts exposed, and the mayor's approval ratings plunged into the 20s. Debate moderators shifted questions from Grove's alleged underworld ties to why the incumbent allowed such waste to flourish. That evening, the televised mayoral debate crackled with tension. Dre stood at one podium, the incumbent at the other. When asked about budget shortfalls, Dre leaned forward. My opponents have overseen our city's declined failing schools, shuttered clinics, cracked roads. Meanwhile, we've tunneled beneath mountains, bridged county gaps, delivered water, power, broadband, and now healthcare. The question isn't if I can govern, it's if you can afford not to elect me. The response shot his poll numbers upward in real time. Tickers on the bottom of every channel flashing Carter plus 12. Election day dawned crisp and clear. Broadband hotspots in every precinct streamed PSA videos from Dre urging peaceful turnout. T-Bone's observer teams and Green Cap staffed each location, directing voters and diffusing any scuffles. Desio's security sweeps cleared rogue agitators before they even arrived. By nightfall, returns showed a sweeping Grove victory. Drake Carter was 62%, capturing all but the districts. A week later, Dre was sworn in on the steps of City Hall, bulletproof Grove vest beneath his ceremonial sash. The city's first ex-con mayor sworn to uplift the people who had once feared him. His inaugural address echoed through the plaza and across Gridcom's broadcast network. Tonight, we begin a new era where the streets we once fought to control now control their own destinies. From infrastructure to education, from health to housing, Grove Street will be your partner no longer in the shadows, but at the heart of governance. We rise together. In the months that followed, Grove's blueprint unfolded. New clinics opened in Davis, Strawberry, and La Puerta. Mobile classrooms rolled through rural areas. Debt forgiveness programs wiped clean small business loans. The San Andreas Highway extension neared completion, promising commerce to Blaine County. Broadnet entered contract talks with major telecoms to expand across the state, and behind the scenes, their team quietly negotiated port rights in San Fierro and Vice City. Ready in the next chapter in a transnational network, City Hall became Grove's nerve center. Its committee staffed by handpicked carolers and Elbro crews turned city planners. Critics howled corruption, but Dre answered each charge by delivering roads, power, and prosperity. The FIB's investigation sputtered under public pressure from the clinic's success to the broadband boom. The electorate saw only progress, and in the glow of Greenson's rooftop helipad, Dre Carter and the Grove triumvirate of Miranda, T-Bone, and Desio watched over a city remade. They begun as street soldiers, then infrastructure barons, and now stewards of governance itself. The final conquest wasn't territory or turf, it was legitimacy, and they held it in both hands. Los Santos, wired end to end with Grove's lifeblood, had become a testament. That power, when built brick by brick and clinic by clinic, tunnel by tunnel, could rewrite destiny itself, and at its helm stood one man from Ganton, reminding everyone forever, Grove Street is more than a neighborhood. It's a nation, asterisk. The morning sunlight slanted in through the floor-to-ceiling windows of City Hall's new Grove Pavilion, casting long emerald bars across the marble floors. Mayor Drake Carter stood at the head of the council chamber, a room once stifled by old guard politics, now buzzing with Grove's quiet confidence. Behind him, screens streamed real-time upgrades from every corner of Los Santos, water flows ticking up in Davis, sentry cams lighting up Glen, visitation stats climbing in remote, clinics down in El Quebrados. He cleared his throat, and the room hushed. When I walked out of Bolingbroke 6 years ago, he began, voice steady. This city saw me as a statistic, a cautionary tale. Grove Street saw me as family. Together we've built roads and rails powered homes and clinics, and given every neighborhood a voice. His gaze swept over familiar faces. Miranda, thumbs already dancing on her tablet. T-Bone, scanning through security logs. Dezio, arms folded in that silent watchman's stance. Today we close one chapter and open another. Los Santos isn't just my home. Grove Street's blueprint has become its backbone. Behind them, the chamber doors open and filed a dozen neighborhood ambassadors, corner store owners, youth program graduates, small business entrepreneurs, all wearing subtle green pins. Each had a story, a family saved by a walk-in clinic, a single mother who got her first broadband at home, a mechanic whose yard got repaved by Groveworks. They took seats alongside the city's traditional power brokers, and in that moment, everyone was equal under the Grove banner. Drake clicked a remote. The holomap flickered to the East Coast corridor he quietly negotiated months ago. Freighter routes through San Fierro, a logistics hub rising on Vice City's docks, a private sector task force rebuilding Atlantic City's boardwalk. Our work doesn't end at the city limits, he explained. We export our model partnership, accountability, and hard hat results to every port, every pedestrian mall, every back road that needs rebuilding. The ambassadors nodded. This was their mission now as well. When the ceremony ended, Dre slipped into the adjoining control room. He tapped through dashboards. Election turnout in Gary, Indiana, port inspections in Port Stanley, water rights cases in Terra Rabata. A secure feed showed a convoy rolling into Blaine County's desalination plant. He let the data wash over him, numbers humming with the pulse of a growing network. Miranda appeared at his side. The final transfers cleared. Grovnets. Next node goes live in Vice City within the hour, and the legislation for Grove International Trade Authority passed in committee. She smiled, exhaustion and exhilaration mingling in her eyes. We did it, boss. Drake closed his laptop, stretching out for the first time that morning. We did. He agreed. But this is only the foundation. He walked to the window and stared down at the grid of streets, alleys, and freeway overpasses. He transformed every junction a testament to a promise kept. Grove Street was born again. He said quietly, tonight, it belongs to the world. And as the sun fully cleared the horizon, its light splintered into 1,000 emerald shards across Los Santos. In that fractured glow, Drake Carter saw not just a city reborn, but the limitless expanse of what a single neighborhood driven by unwavering conviction could achieve. The final page was written, but the story of Grove Street, he knew, had only just begun.
You know we got stories from Vice City and Liberty City too, right? Go peep the channel and see for yourself. Just don't go running your mouth to the cops. Don't bounce without dropping that like, you feel me? And don't get caught slipping. See you in the block.